My close friend Zhao Wanqing and I gave birth simultaneously. She welcomed a girl, while I bore a boy. Yet, no sooner had the child let out a resounding wail than a flurry of comments drifted across our view. Alas, how heart-wrenching it would be for them to know their children would not survive beyond their first year. Indeed, one child is doomed to die painfully at the hands of a mother-in-law who favors sons, while the other is personally condemned to death by the emperor, wary of the Li family's military power. These two infants have truly been born under ill-fated stars. Is it not the pair of dear friends who suffer the most? Not only have their children been tragically killed, but they too fall victim to scoundrels, leaving them without heirs, and after death, they are suppressed by Taoist priests, eternally denied the chance of rebirth. Upon reading the comments, my friend and I shuddered in unison. After exchanging a knowing glance, we swiftly swapped our children. 1. Observing the swift exchange of children between me and Wanqing, the barrage of comments fell into a momentary silence, quickly followed by a flurry of question marks. Am I seeing things? How did they suddenly swap their children? It's only right. The dog emperor has always been wary of the Li family's military might. And now that Li Chaoyang has given birth to a son, he must be concerned that the Li family might seek to usurp the throne. It's only natural he would want to eliminate this child. Although neither of their husbands are virtuous men, at least this way, both children's lives can be preserved. At this, Wanqing and I exchanged a discreet glance, both inwardly relieved. For we understood that while the veracity of the other claims in the barrage was uncertain, the emperor's apprehension towards the Li family's formidable power was undoubtedly true. Just then, a voice called from outside the carriage. Your Highness! My personal maid, Sihua, hurriedly lifted the carriage curtain. Upon seeing that I had given birth, she rushed forward to take the child, immediately checking its gender. Congratulations, Your Highness! You have a little princess, Sihua exclaimed with a smile. Meanwhile, the barrage swiftly scrolled by with a disconcerting message. Poor Li Chaoyang, unaware that Sihua, who grew up alongside her, is actually a spy sent by the emperor to monitor her, her son was poisoned by Sihua. I could not help but clench my fists tightly, my nails digging into my flesh. I could hardly believe that Sihua, who had been my companion since childhood, was actually an agent of the emperor. Wanqing looked at me with concern, fearing I might impulsively confront Sihua, and subtly shook her head. Taking a deep breath to quell my tumultuous emotions, I addressed Sihua. Quickly wrap the child to keep her warm. When will the emperor arrive? Wanqing and I were not supposed to be out at this time, being so close to our due dates. However, following the death of the late emperor, the new emperor, in an attempt to showcase his filial piety, ordered the palace concubines and officials of rank 4 and above, along with their wives, to weep as they escorted him to the outskirts. Little did we expect that the carriage we were riding would suddenly lose control on the return journey. Fortunately, having trained in horseback riding with my father since childhood, I managed to rein in the horses and plunged a dagger into one of their necks, halting the carriage's advance. Yet, both Wanqing and I were startled, causing our waters to break and labor to commence simultaneously. Had it not been for the Barrage's revelation, I would never have suspected the emperor as the mastermind behind this accident. But now, I felt a chilling dread, perhaps from the very beginning. The emperor had deliberately orchestrated my departure from the palace while heavily pregnant, intending for it to result in a double tragedy. Wanqing had been ensnared by my plight.
2.
Before Sihua could respond, the sound of hoofbeats resonated from outside the carriage. Chaoyang, are you alright? I tightly gripped the fabric of my clothing, biting down on my teeth. Wanqing, sensing my distress, held my hand firmly, offering silent comfort. I quickly regained my composure and feebly called out, Your Majesty, I am well. The emperor's voice relaxed at my words. That is a relief. Do you have any idea how fearful I was when I saw the carriage lose control? Now that I see you unharmed, I can rest easy. Hearing his tone, I replied with a hint of melancholy. Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. But I regret that I could not bear you a little prince. I am truly sorry for not being able to repay your kindness towards me. The emperor's voice lightened considerably. What does it matter? As long as it is a child born of Chaoyang, I will cherish it. When we return, I shall bestow the title of Princess Mingzhu upon our daughter. What do you think? I responded with a mix of surprise and gratitude. Thank you, Your Majesty. At that moment, Sihua brought forth the swaddled child. Shortly thereafter, Wanqing's husband, Gu Hanzhong, along with her maid, arrived in haste. Wanqing, are you in the carriage? Gu Hanzhong's tone was laced with panic. Wanqing tightened her grip on my hand and softly reassured him, Husband, I am here in the carriage. You need not worry about me. Please take care of our child. Just then, Wanqing's maid entered to take the hastily bundled child away. With the emperor having gained a daughter while Gu Hanzhong had a son, he dared not show any sign of joy. After a brief glance at the child, he ordered for the baby to be taken away. Wanqing and I were soon provided with new carriages to return home. Before parting, we exchanged a gesture that only we could comprehend. 3. Upon returning to the palace, the emperor joyously elevated my status to that of the imperial noble consort and conferred the title of Princess Mingzhu upon my daughter, allowing me to rest during my confinement. The child was entrusted to a wet nurse for care. Hardly had I laid down to rest when Sihua brought me a bowl of nourishing soup. Your Highness, you have just given birth and need to replenish your strength. Please drink some soup to restore your vitality. As soon as Sihua finished speaking, the barrage erupted with warnings. Do not drink it. The soup contains blood-stimulating saffron. Consuming it right after childbirth could lead to excessive bleeding. This Sihua is utterly despicable. If not for Li Chaoyang saving her from being sold to a brothel by her gambling father, she would have never hesitated to harm her. In the story, she tampered with the incense around Li Chaoyang, gradually deteriorating her health, leading to Li Chaoyang's demise from sorrow after her son was poisoned, ultimately being buried in the emperor's mausoleum. I fixed my gaze on the bowl of soup in Sihua's hands, fatigued as I said, Set it aside for now. I would like to eat the butterfly pastries you made. Please prepare some for me. Unaware that I was privy to her treachery, Sihua readily agreed. I shall do so at once. Once Li Chaoyang had departed, I immediately dismissed the other palace maids from the inner chamber, bringing in the hidden guards my father had assigned to me. Investigate whether there is anything amiss with this bowl of soup or the incense in the burner. The barrage was taken aback by my actions. Li Chaoyang actually has hidden guards? This was never mentioned in the storyline. This is only reasonable. Li Chaoyang is the only precious treasure of General Qin. After her mother's death, General Qin would rather be considered childless than father another son. Such a man would never leave his daughter defenseless in a predatory palace. Exactly. If not for the protection of hidden guards, Li Chaoyang's child would have perished long ago. And the dog emperor would not have seized the opportunity to bring her into the palace after the old emperor's death, intending to orchestrate a double tragedy. I lowered my gaze to the empty soup bowl and, after a moment, instructed the maids to come in and clean up. At that moment, a message from Wanqing appeared in the barrage. Holy cow! Zhao Wanqing, claiming to be injured and unable to serve, has swiftly brought in 2 concubines for Gu Hanzhong, and even taken her green tea cousin, who was born of a secret union, as a secondary wife, stipulating that she herself will raise the child without interference from her mother-in-law. Upon seeing Wanqing's actions, I immediately grasped her intention. By personally nurturing the child, she ensures that there will be no closeness with the Gu family. When the 2 children grow up and return to us, my child will not harbor any special feelings for the Gu family. Likewise, Gu Hanzhong will not be able to leverage his role as a caregiver to demand gratitude. 4. Upon awakening, I found that Sihua had prepared the butterfly pastries. The emperor had also arrived in my chamber, feigning a paternal affection as he gazed at our daughter. Upon seeing me awake, he approached with a smile. Taoyang, you are awake? I nodded with a smile and instructed a maid to bring the child for me to see. The emperor immediately said with tenderness, This child resembles you. She is quite well behaved. I could only find his remark laughable. If he knew this was not my child, I wondered if he would still utter such words. Nonetheless, I eagerly anticipated the day he would learn the truth. At that moment, Sihua approached with the butterfly pastries. Your Highness, the butterfly pastries are ready. Please have a taste. I stole a glance at her and said, The emperor is still here. Let us present it to him first. Sihua paused momentarily, then obediently lowered her gaze and brought the tray before the emperor. The emperor smiled and waved his hand dismissively. I have no fondness for sweets. Take it to the Guifei. Sihua then returned the tray to me. I picked up a piece of butterfly pastry, but just as it reached my lips, I suddenly crushed it in my hand, revealing a look of anguish. Your Majesty, I am suddenly feeling unwell. The emperor cast a quick glance at Si Hua, who promptly set down the tray and anxiously looked at me. Your Highness. What is the matter? I fixed my gaze upon her. It seems I am bleeding again. Si Hua's eyes widened in panic as she averted her gaze from mine. What shall we do? At that moment, the emperor shouted loudly, "Summon the imperial physician. Quickly, summon the physician." Before long, the physician arrived. After checking my pulse, he knelt before the emperor with a look of alarm. Your Majesty, it is grave. The Guifei is suffering from a uterine hemorrhage. Upon hearing this, the emperor's expression turned to one of fury. What do you mean? How could Chaoyang possibly be afflicted with such a condition? The physician immediately replied. Based on the Guifei's pulse, it appears she must have consumed something that stimulates blood flow. At this, I turned my gaze sharply towards Si Hua. Si Hua, since my return, I have only consumed the nourishing soup you provided. What on earth is happening? Si Hua instantly knelt, crying out in protest. But I knew the emperor would not spare her. My bleeding incident required someone to take the blame. Sure enough, the emperor soon commanded that Si Hua be taken away for interrogation, then ordered the physician to save me. If Chaoyang cannot be saved, I will hold you accountable. The physician hurriedly nodded and swiftly prepared a prescription, instructing someone to fetch the herbs and brew the medicine. The emperor, witnessing this, feigned concern as he grasped my hand to comfort me. Do not fear, Chaoyang. I shall ensure your safety. I let out a cold laugh internally, yet feigned immense weakness as I looked at him. I thank your Majesty, but should anything happen to me, I beg you to take good care of our daughter. The emperor, observing my fragile demeanor as I delivered what seemed like my last words, nodded gravely. Little did he know, the physician who had just examined my pulse was in fact my ally. Thus, after consuming a bowl of medicine, I quickly pretended to cease my bleeding. Watching the emperor force a smile, I suppressed my inner hatred and said, Your Majesty, I am tired. The emperor finally snapped back to reality. Then Chaoyang, please rest well. I shall not disturb you. He then rose and departed. The audience, observing my performance, erupted in applause. Finally, that traitor Si Hua is gone. As long as she remains by my side, Li Chaoyang will never be safe. If you ask me, with a son and military power, Li Chaoyang should eliminate that dog emperor and seize control herself. What is the point of merely being a regent? Why not go big and ascend as the empress herself? Exactly. The dog emperor currently has few heirs. As long as the harem continues to bear no princes, Li Chaoyang's son will be the sole heir. Becoming empress may be difficult, but isn't becoming a regent empress much easier? Upon reading the comments, my heart began to race uncontrollably. An unprecedented ambition surged within me. Yes, since the emperor has shown me no mercy, why should I not repay the same in kind? Even if I cannot become an empress, at the very least, I can strive to be a regent empress. Is that not better than living a lifetime subjugated beneath imperial power? Moreover, historically, the realm has always been firmly held by men. Why should women be denied the right to wield power? The audience's words led me to believe that perhaps ruling the world is not as unattainable as I once thought. Lying in bed, I intently read the comments, my mind racing as I contemplated the odds of usurping the throne. I swiftly reached a conclusion. It was worth the risk. If my father were to learn of the emperor's malice towards me, he would undoubtedly side with me. As for the civil officials, Wan Qing's father is the head of the esteemed Zhao family, with countless disciples under his name. Wan Qing is his cherished jewel. With her persuasion, coupled with the fact that my son has been recognized as his grandson, I have no doubt that the head of the Zhao family would support my son's ascension. Once I secure his backing, the civil official faction would pose no threat. Thus, the most pressing issue now is how to eliminate the dog emperor without arousing suspicion. Only with his demise can I ascend the throne. Furthermore, I must ensure that no second prince emerges from the harem. Contemplating this, a fierce expression crossed my face. The audience immediately reacted. What the hell? What is Li Chaoyang plotting? That expression is filled with murderous intent. Oh my, that gaze is sending chills down my spine. Seeing this, I quickly reined in my emotions. The following days were spent in confinement, with Si Hua having committed suicide in the Ministry of Justice. I promoted a maid and a young eunuch. These two had previously been discovered in a secret relationship and were meant to be executed by the Empress. I had intervened, saving them. Grateful, They now served me diligently, ensuring that every task I assigned was executed flawlessly. Once my confinement ended, I requested the emperor's permission for my father to enter the palace to attend my child's full moon celebration. The emperor, deeming a girl to pose no threat to his reign, readily agreed. After revealing the emperor's deeds to my father, he erupted in fury. That scoundrel Zheng Yi promised me he would treat you well. I immediately handed him a cup of tea. Father, please calm down. I then casually recounted the tale of how Wan Qing and I had exchanged children. My father's eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets. Choyang, have you lost your mind? I remained composed, meeting his gaze. Father, if Zheng Yi discovers I have given birth to a son, do you think he would allow the child to live? My father fell silent. I continued, since Zheng Yi has broken his word, we cannot remain passive. Now that we have a prince and military power, I believe I am entitled to claim that position as well, don't you think? My father's eyes widened further. The next moment, he slammed his hand on the table. Let us do it. At worst, we face annihilation. After all, it's just the two of us now. What do we have to fear? I nodded eagerly. I knew my father would support me. Meanwhile, the audience erupted with a chorus of astonished woe. Are they really plotting a coup? Is this tragic tale suddenly transforming into a powerful female narrative? This father-daughter duo is bold. They're ready to fight at the slightest disagreement. Hey, to be honest, given Li Chaoyang's circumstances, not retaliating would be an injustice to herself. Rather than living in fear under the dog emperor, it is better to rise and take control. Indeed, Li Chaoyang, do not hesitate. Take him down. Seeing this, I could not help but smile wryly. I am someone who listens to advice. Due to the previous emperor's passing, the current emperor observed a period of mourning for 3 months before eagerly returning to the harem to indulge in his concubines. Little did he know, during those 3 months, I had been covertly employing his own tactics against him, tampering with his food and drink, eagerly awaiting the moment he would step back into the harem. Meanwhile, the court gradually resumed its customary social interactions. Aware of Wan Qing's deep longing for her child, I summoned her to the palace under the pretense of alleviating her boredom. Once she arrived, I dismissed the attendants, allowing her to hold her precious daughter. As she gazed upon her soft and adorable girl, Wan Qing's eyes brimmed with tears. Chaoyang, thank you for taking such good care of her. In response, I shook my head. Mingzhu resembles you in your youth, quiet and well-behaved, requiring little effort to nurture. I then turned my attention back to Wan Qing. Wan Qing, you have been well-versed in literature since childhood, possessing a wealth of knowledge. Are you truly content to languish in the courtyard for the rest of your days? You must have discerned my intentions by now, she replied. Upon hearing my words, Wan Qing nodded and then focused her gaze on her daughter. After a moment, she said, Chaoyang, pursue whatever you desire. This world has been governed by men for far too long. It is time for women to take their place. I refuse to witness the horror of newborn girls being slaughtered any longer. I nodded vigorously in agreement. At that moment, the barrage of comments surged with excitement. Well said. I would sacrifice my tyrannical superior's hair to prey for your successful usurpation. I take back my previous words about Zhao Wanqing being a coward. You are far bolder than Gu Hanzhong. Truly a good confidant. They say like attracts like. A confidant who dares to rebel is truly remarkable. Seeing the comments, Wan Qing and I exchanged smiles. Subsequently, I inquired about her husband's family. Wan Qing, do not hesitate to voice any needs for assistance. Earlier, the comments had mentioned that following the brutal death of her daughter, Wan Qing's mother-in-law took the liberty of marrying Gu Hanzhong multiple concubines, citing her inability to bear a son. Meanwhile, Gu Hanzhong's cousin was raised outside, giving birth to a son for him. Naturally, Gu Hanzhong did not want a son to be considered a bastard. Thus, he allowed his mother to torment Wan Qing, leading to her succumbing to illness after kneeling in the rain for 2 hours, ultimately passing away. Even after her death, the Gu family did not spare her. Despite Wan Qing having offered Gu Hanzhong literary advice on several occasions, he feigned admiration while secretly harboring jealousy toward her talent, believing her assistance to be condescending. Consequently, he deceitfully arranged for Wan Qing's corpse to be placed beneath a bridge, where it was trampled by countless passers-by, and had a Taoist suppress her soul beneath the bridge, ensuring she could never attain rebirth. Upon reading these comments, I felt an overwhelming urge to inflict 1,000 tortures upon Gu Hanzhong. Had he not been Wanqing's husband, their fates intertwined. Would she have expended so much effort to assist him in revising his works? Yet, rather than expressing gratitude, Gu Hanzong chose to harbor resentment toward Wanqing. It was utterly revolting. Uncle Zhao would likely never realize that his cherished daughter was slain by the very scholar he had so meticulously selected. Upon hearing my sentiments, however, Wanqing merely shook her head gently. Chaoyang, you need not worry about me. It is merely the Gu family. If not for our child requiring a father to shield us from prying eyes, I would have dealt with him during my confinement. Upon hearing Wanqing's words, the comments erupted with the phrase werewolf. Although we were unfamiliar with its meaning, it certainly did not seem derogatory. Before departing, Wanqing grasped my hand tightly. Rest assured, Chaoyang, I will care for our child. She then hinted, as for the character she develops, it entirely depends on your desires. Reflect upon it carefully. I understood her implication. If my intention was to merely act as a regent, the vast empire would inevitably be entrusted to our son one day. For the sake of the common people, we could not raise a child who would become a tyrant. However, if I aspired to seize the throne as a female emperor, then having a son who is inept would be advantageous. I comprehend. I will deliberate thoroughly, I nodded in acknowledgement. Yet, we both understood that to act as a regent, it was sufficient to eliminate the emperor and support a juvenile heir to the throne. However, aspiring to be a female emperor would directly threaten the fundamental interests of men, and they would not relinquish their power easily. Fortunately, we had access to the comments. Hearing my conversation with Wanqing, the comments quickly flooded in. You must become the female emperor. Li Chaoyang, do not be foolish. Having your son as the emperor cannot compare to your own rule as a female sovereign. Li Chaoyang, do not show weakness. Your son may betray you, but power will only bolster you. In the imperial family, there are no bonds of mother and son. You are already planning to act as regent. Who knows if your son will turn against you once you restore power? At this juncture, do not indulge in feminine compassion. A woman must be ruthless to secure her position. Look at Empress Wu. Whether son or daughter, anyone who obstructs her ascension faced death. As I read the barrage of comments, Wanqing and I exchanged glances for a moment. Then, Wanqing offered me a gentle smile, glanced at our daughter in the cradle, and turned to depart. Everything remained unspoken. I had instructed my people to add a substance to Zheng Yi's meals that would invigorate and energize him. As a result, Zheng Yi felt an inexhaustible vigor coursing through him. Consequently, he began to spend increasing amounts of time in the harem. Coupled with the flattery from the concubines and the deliberate adulation from my arranged individuals, Zheng Yi became increasingly ensnared in the pleasures of the flesh. Within just half a year, he had grown utterly indolent, becoming increasingly inattentive to the affairs of state. His temperament began to sour, leading to instances of arbitrarily striking palace maids and eunuchs. Witnessing Zheng Yi's escalating volatility, the atmosphere within the palace became fraught with anxiety. In the court, Zheng Yi also became increasingly irritable during morning assemblies. The censors implored him earnestly, yet in a fit of rage, he ordered his attendants to drag the chief censor out and beat him. When an official stood up to defend the censor, he too was punished. In his despair and fury, the chief censor chose to end his life by colliding with the throne in the Golden Hall. This incident escalated the situation to a significant crisis. Regardless of how Zheng Yi ultimately met his demise, the scandal of having forced the chief censor to death would undoubtedly be recorded in history. As Zheng Yi continued to indulge in pleasure, his neglect of state affairs intensified. The empress attempted to counsel him multiple times, only to provoke his ire, resulting in her demotion from her position. In an instant, the empress grew disheartened by Zheng Yi and chose to shut herself away, dedicating her time to prayers and meditation. As for me, I navigated the currents of Zheng Yi's whims while simultaneously seizing the opportunity to engage with state affairs and win the people's hearts. Initially, Zheng Yi was naturally wary of me. However, my reputation for being inept at literature and my frequent misreading of documents led him to believe I was genuinely uneducated, thus lowering his guard. As the effects of the drugs seeped deeper into his being, Zheng Yi became increasingly dependent on the charms of women. The physician, during routine examinations, merely attributed his condition to his exceptional vitality. This flattery led Zheng Yi to laugh heartily in self-satisfaction. He began to indulge in nightly revelries with numerous women, living in a state of perpetual disarray, unaware of the passing days. Yet, he failed to notice that despite his nightly escapades, no concubine in the harem had become pregnant. Meanwhile, I continued to engage with state affairs. Having been influenced by my father, I possessed some understanding of military strategy. However, navigating the intricacies of court politics was less familiar territory for me. Fortunately, the comments provided assistance. Whenever I encountered a matter I did not comprehend, the comments offered timely guidance. Additionally, I had the support of my father and Wan Qing. Gradually, I began to grasp the nuances of court matters, and managing state affairs became increasingly intuitive. Time flew by swiftly, and before long, 3 years had passed. Due to the incessant revelry, Zheng Yi's physical constitution has been nearly depleted. At this juncture, the royal family grew increasingly anxious. If Zheng Yi's disinterest in the harem had led to the absence of an heir, it would be one matter. Yet he behaved like a lustful beast, indulging daily, without respite. Despite this relentless effort, he had yet to yield a single fruit, leaving the harem with naught but a long princess as its sole offspring. Thus, the issue of whose body was failing was all too apparent. The existence of a prince is fundamental to the stability of the nation. Observing Zheng Yi's inability to produce an heir, the matter of adoption became the most prudent option. Consequently, the royal relatives began to pressure Zheng Yi into adopting an heir. Zheng Yi was incensed by this. I have Mingzhu, which is proof that my body is sound. It is merely 3 years without a child. And yet you force me to adopt. It seems you all are eagerly wishing for me to remain childless, so you may seize my empire. He then resolved to hold a grand selection of beauties. If the women in the harem cannot bear children, I shall replace them. I refuse to believe that with my vigor, I cannot produce a son. The emperor's lack of heirs was indeed a matter of national concern. Thus, the ministers could do little to prevent Zheng Yi from proceeding with the selection. Half a year later, a multitude of beauties entered the harem. Zheng Yi was eager to prove his virility. Upon their arrival, he indiscriminately favored 3 of them in a single night. Yet, after 2 months, all those who had been favored showed no signs of pregnancy. Zheng Yi was filled with dread and confusion, ultimately questioning his own fertility. He pondered that his body could not withstand much longer. At this time, I subtly hinted to Zheng Yi that Mingzhu bore no resemblance to him. Zheng Yi indeed began to doubt Mingzhu's true identity. Following the physician's suggestion, he secretly conducted a blood test with Mingzhu. The results, naturally, were incompatible. Enraged, Zheng Yi overturned the table and stormed toward the imperial study with sword in hand. Kicking open the door to the study, Zheng Yi glared at me with bloodshot eyes. Sword pointed menacingly. Li Chaoyang, I have treated you well, yet you dare to betray me? Speak, who is your lover? Otherwise, I shall kill you. Hearing Zheng Yi's words, I feigned surprise. Your Majesty, I am wronged. I swear, I have never betrayed you. If I speak falsely, may I suffer a terrible fate. Seeing my aggrieved expression and such a fervent oath, Zheng Yi hesitated. Then how do you explain the incompatibility of my blood with Mingzhu's? I looked at him in shock. What? That cannot be true. Could it be the water is flawed? Did the medical texts not state that if alum is placed in water, even if not biologically related, the blood may mingle, whereas clear oil in water will prevent even biological kin from merging? Hearing my words, Zheng Yi appeared taken aback. Is that true? I immediately nodded. Would I dare deceive your Majesty? If you doubt me, you may consult the physician. Only then did Zheng Yi lower his weapon, coldly stating, Very well. Let us conduct another blood test. I nodded and signaled the eunuch beside me. As we arrived at the harem, a maid brought news. Your Highness, Madam Chun brings the child to pay respects. I promptly responded, Please invite them in. I then instructed for clean water to be prepared anew. Soon, Zheng Yi and Mingzhu underwent another blood test. Yet again, their blood failed to merge. Upon witnessing this, Zheng Yi cast a dark look at me. Do you have anything to say? I displayed an expression of disbelief. This cannot be. I could never do anything to betray your Majesty. Mingzhu, frightened by Zheng Yi's demeanor, began to weep uncontrollably. At that moment, Wan Qing entered with her son. Upon entering, Wan Qing knelt and paid her respects to Zheng Yi. My maid, astonished, gazed at the boy and exclaimed, Your Highness, this young master bears a striking resemblance to the emperor. Hearing this, Zhang Yi and I simultaneously turned our attention to the child. Suddenly, I fixed my excited gaze on Wanqing. Wanqing, after we gave birth, we both lost consciousness. Did we not? Wanqing paused, then nodded.
Yes.
I then turned back to Zheng Yi. Your Majesty, I implore you to conduct one more blood test with Wanqing's son. I suspect that Sihua took advantage of our unconsciousness to switch our children. After all, Sihua was already dead. There would be no evidence to contest my claim. Upon hearing my words, Zheng Yi fixed a penetrating gaze on the child, then promptly commanded someone to prick the boy's finger, allowing his blood to drip into a bowl. Before long, their blood began to merge. Witnessing this, Zheng Yi rushed forward, grabbing the child's arm. So you are my son. I knew I could not be incapable of fatherhood.
Ha ha ha.
Subsequently, to ensure certainty, Zheng Yi conducted several more blood tests, all resulting in the merging of their blood. At last, Zheng Yi was convinced that this child was indeed his. He eagerly acknowledged the boy's identity and declared him the crown prince, which forced Mingzhu to return to the Gu family. The sudden transformation of their son into a daughter left the Gu family in dismay. Due to Wanqing's clandestine machinations, Gu Hanzhong's scheming cousin inadvertently caused the loss of one child while another concubine bore only a daughter, which further displeased the Gu family. Simultaneously, they were filled with regret for not having endeavored to befriend their son while he was still in the Gu household, thus squandering the opportunity to cultivate a relationship with one who would become the future emperor. Yet, they remained oblivious to the fact that upon Mingzhu's return to the Gu family, Wanqing would ensure they would have no chance at survival, and their demise would undoubtedly be far from merciful. After establishing the crown prince, Zheng Yi, under immense pressure, had no choice but to declare me as empress. It was at this moment he finally recognized that the court was no longer under his control. He began to seek fault with me. While I was reviewing memorials, he burst in, his gaze icy as he admonished Li Chaoyang, the harem must not meddle in politics. What are you doing? Are you usurping power? I am not dead yet. Who permitted you to interfere in state affairs and tamper with memorials?
Guards.
Seize the empress and cast her into the cold palace.
To this,
I merely regarded him with indifference. How amusing. My son had been declared the crown prince. Did he truly believe he had many days left to live? Before long, Zheng Yi sensed something was amiss. His commands held no sway over the Jin Dao guards outside. In an instant, Zheng Yi's expression soured, akin to having swallowed a fly. He fixed a terrified stare upon me. Have you replaced my Jin Dao guards? Li Chaoyang, you are exceedingly bold. Do you intend to usurp the throne? Hearing this, I smiled faintly. Why not? Zheng Yi, upon hearing my words, was instantly driven to a fit of rage, spitting a mouthful of black blood. Gazing at the dark blood he had expelled, Zheng Yi's face mirrored disbelief. Why is my blood black? The comments section erupted in mockery. Your heart is black. So why would your blood not be? Oh no. Is he going to die from anger? Is it time for dragon slaying? Puffed. What kind of dragon is he? At best, he is a worm. Faced with such ridicule, I could not help but chuckle softly. What do you think? In truth, I knew from the very beginning that I had given birth to a son. Zheng Yi, upon hearing my words, immediately trembled and pointed at me before collapsing straight to the ground. I feigned panic and shouted, Someone! The emperor has fallen. Quickly, summon the imperial physician. The entire assembly of physicians from the imperial medical office was summoned to examine Zheng Yi, each taking his pulse in turn, only to shake their heads in dismay. Your Majesty, I regret to inform you that the emperor has indulged excessively in pleasures and has utterly depleted his vitality. There is nothing more I can do. Upon hearing this, I could only sorrowfully wipe away non-existent tears. If that is the case, gentlemen physicians, do your utmost. Upon hearing my words, the physicians sighed in relief. However, despite Zheng Yi clinging to life for 7 more days, he ultimately succumbed. With his passing, our 4-year-old son ascended the throne. Consequently, I naturally became the Empress Dowager, exercising power behind the curtain. The moment I stepped onto the court, the comments began to flood in once more. Watching Li Chaoyang rise to this point has been immensely satisfying. I adore a strong, career-driven female protagonist. The only regret is that Li Chaoyang didn't have the resolve to eliminate her son, alas. As long as he remains, he poses a future threat. After all, He is a piece of flesh born after 10 months of pregnancy. It is only natural for Li Chaoyang to hesitate. Yet, there lingers a feeling of something stuck in the throat. Rather than witnessing that little brat on the throne, I would prefer to see Li Chaoyang in the highest position. Isn't it said that women cannot achieve great things? The emperor has been disposed of. Why keep the son? Can one allow others to sleep peacefully beside their bed? Not even if it is one's own child. If it were me, I would have dealt with him. Come on, do you think this is all so simple? If Li Chaoyang dares to claim the throne now, do you believe the ministers would rather support her father than let her ascend as empress? Progress must be gradual. You are far too impatient. Killing the young emperor now would only reveal her hand. Meanwhile, I gazed with a smile at the young emperor seated on the dragon throne, his expression one of fear and lethargy. I turned to signal the head eunuch beside me to commence the court session. Receiving my glance, he promptly announced, "If there are matters to discuss, please speak. If not, the court is dismissed." 10 years later, with the aid of the comments, I managed the state affairs in an orderly manner. However, to ensure that everyone willingly acknowledged me as their sovereign and recognized my position as empress, much more was required. The comments suggested that only by involving more women in the centers of power and forming a community of shared interests could my position be further solidified. I wholeheartedly agreed. Thus, in the first year of my regency, I secretly dispatched dozens of strong and skilled women overseas to seek out the high-yield crops such as sweet potatoes and corn mentioned in the comments. I also sent another capable female general to the land of Japan, where she discovered vast silver mines, filling the national treasury to the brim. The comments indicated that men often usurp the achievements of women. Therefore, upon their successful return, I promptly ordered the historians to record their contributions in the annals of history. By this time, the young emperor had reached the age of 15. The royal family, unwilling to relent, demanded that I restore power to the young emperor. However, before I could respond, the young emperor himself scrambled down from the throne in a panic. He reproached the royal relatives publicly, saying, "Uncle, why do you wish to harm me? Do you not want to see me live well? Mother rises earlier than the rooster and sleeps later than the dog." I attempted to follow her schedule for just 3 days, and I felt a sharp pain in my heart and couldn't stop yawning. "Are you trying to take my life?" With that, he removed the crown from his head. "I believe Mother is far more suited to be emperor than I. I shall leave the throne to her. I am tired and wish to return to sleep." And with yawns, he left amidst a commotion. At that moment, Uncle Zhao unexpectedly stepped forward, earnestly requesting that I accept the abdication. As the head of the civil officials, his voice prompted the bureaucratic faction to support him, while the military leaders were even less inclined to oppose. Ever since the comments indicated that there were new lands overseas, military funding could not be diminished. I enhanced the welfare benefits for soldiers, preparing for future expeditions abroad. With my father's promotion, who among the soldiers did not know that the improved benefits were my doing? Naturally, the military leaders were eager for me to secure my position. A change of emperor could lead to unknown consequences for them. In short, they believed that my terms would not be surpassed. At this juncture, I repeatedly declined, claiming that as a woman, it would be inappropriate. Yet, every argument was countered by the officials. Wan Qing, at this moment, also stood up resolutely, saying, "Your Majesty, if you are unfit to be emperor, then who in the realm is? Please do not refuse any longer, otherwise it may dishearten the common people." Thus, I finally ceased my rejections and reluctantly ascended the throne. The comments erupted in laughter at the scene. Laughing to death. She claims to refuse, yet her heart is undoubtedly elated. Is the one who said women cannot achieve great things still around? Have you seen? The entire court is begging our Qin sister to be empress. One word. Exhilarating. Hee. This is the throne personally abdicated to our Qin sister by the emperor. Who would dare say her ascendance is illegitimate? Zhao Wanqing is simply the strongest supporter. After discovering our Qin sister's ambition, she has been feeding the young emperor exhausting medicines daily, leading to a diagnosis of heart issues upon his return to the palace. He has never tasted the power of authority, only witnessing the toil of an emperor. So, why would he be interested in the throne? Meanwhile, I sat upon the dragon throne, exchanging a quick smile with Wanqing. After my ascension, the court officials advised me to choose a consort, but I firmly refused. Bearing children is akin to traversing the gates of death for a woman. Should I suffer complications from childbirth, the splendid situation that Wan Qing and I had painstakingly achieved would be in jeopardy. My intention in keeping the young emperor was solely to ensure he bore offspring. Regardless of how many consorts he takes, the offspring will only be daughters. 40 years later, I passed the throne to my granddaughter. On my deathbed, I vaguely saw the comments flooding in with "Farewell, Your Majesty, the Empress." Seeing this, I managed a slight smile and said, "Thank you all. If it weren't for you, I would never have dared to imagine that a woman could become an emperor. It was you who ignited my ambition and helped me reach this point. Thank you." The comments erupted with exclamations.
Wow.
I always thought our Qin sister was destined for greatness. Turns out it was all thanks to us. Hee hee with our hints. Who else could be the destined one if not her?
Mum, I'm amazing.
I assisted a female emperor. As I gradually closed my eyes amidst the haze, the story came to a close. Thank you for listening, and we shall meet again in the next tale.